Congratulations. In an attempt to own the close range, mid range, daytime, nighttime, other nighttime, and heat spectrum, among other spectrums, you have ruined your rifle. For the low price of $10,000, you can transition a standard carbine into a post hack job monstrosity rifle that can truly do everything, except be enjoyable to use or look at. I mean, this setup reeks of someone who consumes too much barrel and hatchet content. There's TikTok brain rot, and then there's whatever this is. Jokes aside, they make great content, and there are some great components on this build, just not all together at the same time, please. Speaking of which, none of this is mine. A kind viewer of the channel asked if I wanted to play around with the setup for a little while, and I said yes, so what follows is on me. But in all seriousness, thank you for the use of your seriously cool and expensive boat anchor, good sir. I don't really know where to start with all of this, so I think I'm just gonna go from worst to best. I hate all of the plastic bits. Well, almost all of them. We have anti-reflective devices on both of our optics and ARDs and flip caps on the Vortex Razor HD Gen 3, so let me take this time to vent. 100 Concepts is not only hyper gay and retarded, but I have never seen another company be able to so effectively fleece goobers out of hundreds of dollars for what is nothing more than 3D printed plastic with good marketing. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. There's also a light cover on the Surefire Vampire, which is the only one that I like. Other plastic bits include a throw lever on the LPVO and a throw lever on the LaserSpeed M6TR, which is a fine ergonomic upgrade. Next stop on the hate train is kind of a 2-for-1, but also an unfortunate reality. Thermals are king, but have huge drawbacks as a main optic on a rifle. LPVOs can do most everything on some level at least, and when you try to combine the two, it's, well, cumbersome. And expensive, in this case like $6,000 plus between the Infrared RH25 and the Vortex Razor HD Gen 3 1 to 10. Starting out with the RH25, this can be used as a clip-on or handheld or even a bridged unit with a PVS-14, though for the purposes of this rifle it's either a clip-on or a scanning device. The one thing that is nice about the clip-on is that if you don't want the wrong predator vision, you can just unclip the unit and put it in a pouch or your pack. Talking about the unit's performance, it's pretty good. Now, this is not going to be a review of the unit, but it is a pretty cool piece of kit that adds a level of capability. And it also comes with some downsides. Number one is the cost. I don't know if they make this exact model anymore, but it's between $3,000 and $4,000 street price. Number two is that you have to zero the unit, so the reticle of your optic corresponds to the correct place on your digital screen. Now, as you can probably imagine, you can't just crank the magnification on the Razor HD up to 10x for a screen that's 1 inch in front of your optic. Between 1 and 4, it looks okay. Keep in mind that the unit also has 4x of digital zoom, which works about the same. Now, when it came to actually using it clipped in front of the Razor, it didn't work great for me in the frozen tundra of South Dakota. The rifle and my hand was far warmer than anything else in the desolate wasteland, so I wasn't really able to see much. And since I'm sure the local ranchers didn't want me using their livestock as target practice, I didn't really even get to use the thing as intended. Obviously, in places that don't closely resemble an environment out of a Stephen King novel, you will probably have a better time. The last issue with the unit on this rifle is of course the added weight to an already bogged down rifle. The unit plus steel dovetail mount is right at 1 pound. Granted, most of the time it's probably going to be living in a pouch and then be installed from a stable position where you can actually utilize it, but just keep in mind that there is a noticeable size and weight cost. Thermal is a very important capability, especially if you're looking to current overseas conflicts. However, getting that capability onto a rifle, whether a dedicated optic or clip-on, comes with those downsides. But again, it is a cool piece of tech and something worth investing in, at least in the future. Now, talking about the optic itself, I have a full video of the Razor Gen 3 on the Gun.Deals channel, so check that out there. But the basics for downsides are similar. $2,000 plus at a minimum, and almost 2 pounds when you add in the mount, plastic, and Steiner MPS on top. The Gen 3 can do just about anything, and I know lots of serious competition shooters love it because of its speed and versatility at distance, and for that application, I 100% get it. Now, on this 14.5-inch base rifle, I took it out to 500 plus yards without issue. One thing that I will say is that the 1X on the Razor HD Gen 3 kind of sucks, and the glass at 10x isn't great. So I don't know exactly what you're paying for other than the diffractive illumination tech. The usability is surprisingly good, so I will give it that. So while I don't personally love the thing, I think it's fine and honestly fits in with the rest of this system. Now, of course, we're not done with optics yet because there is, of course, a Steiner MPS mounted to the top of our LPVO. And while looking through it and this stupid plastic ARD is not particularly pleasant, I think it's a good dot. So now let's talk about our aiming options, because this build is all about options. Up front, we have the LaserSpeed M6TR, which is a very solid unit for under $1,000, and while it's not ergonomically the best, I think the performance is actually great. Good power, clean laser, switchology is decent. The only thing that's not great is the beam adjustment placement, but that's why there's a 3D printed throw lever on there to make that job a little bit easier. Then next to that, we have a Surefire Vampire Light, which has both IR and white light capabilities. So to go through the list of our capabilities, we can use the Razor on its own or combined with the clip-on thermal, and of course we have our top dot, which rounds out our daylight options. Moving to our low light options, we can passively aim using the top dot, we can passive plus using the top dot and the vampire setting on the Surefire to provide additional illumination, or we can active aim using the LAN, or of course we can fall back to our thermal clip-on. So whatever situation you can come up with in your caffeine-riddled mind as you watch little Dark Age edits on TikTok of your favorite foreign war, rest restlessly that this build can handle it, even if you can't. Now, we haven't even talked about the base rifle yet, and before we get there, I should mention that we, of course, have all of our switches and rail wraps and kinesthetic angled foregrip rounding out the accoutrements to our build. So now with all of that out of the way, I actually like the rest of the system. It's a 14.5-inch pin and weld with a Reardon Plan B mount out front. The barrel is, I believe, a Geisley with the 13.5-inch Mark 16 rail, which again, I quite like all of that. Moving back, the receiver, BCG, and Radiant charging handle rounds out the rifle for a good base rifle, even if everything on top of it is maybe a bit much for me. It's a very smooth shooting rifle, very, very accurate. The shooting that I did out at 500 yards was with just Fiocchi 55 grain M193 and a 15-mile-an-hour crosswind, and the combination of good base accuracy and the very useful holds on the Razor's reticle made the job very easy. Again, all of the individual components on their own are very high quality. But when you put them all together on a single rifle in an effort to do everything, you start to realize that do-it-all builds actually just kind of suck to use. They sound great on paper, but in practice it's a bit much. Now, I don't even think that this is necessarily a bad implementation of a do-it-all system. I might swap out a few parts here and there personally and cut out a few ounces overall, but even in the best implementation of that system possible, it's a lot to ask of any single rifle. Now, not to be too dour on the idea of all this, but it's a lot of work just to be turned into target practice by a $100 drone. So then I ask you, dear viewer, how do you get thermal capability, daytime with magnification, nighttime with both passive and active aiming options into a single rifle system without turning it into a 14-pound grave marker? Probably not. But with all that out of the way, gentlemen, let me know what you think of this do-it-all rifle with all of the accoutrements you could ever want. And once again, with all that out of the way, gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.